Today, a new and arguably troubling development in the bizarre saga where President Trump sued the IRS for $10 billion. Sources familiar with the matter tell ABC News the president is expected to drop his legal challenge, but he still wants a $1.7 billion fund to compensate allies who claim they were wrongfully targeted by the Biden administration. That money would come from taxpayers and could benefit nearly 1,600 people charged in connection with the January 6th Capitol riot, as well as some others associated with Trump, although the president himself is excluded from receiving payments. In a request for comment, Trump's legal team told ABC, quote, President Trump continues to hold those who wrong America and Americans accountable. The DOJ, IRS, and Treasury Department did not issue a comment. Joining us now, Bill Kristol, Bulwark editor-at-large. Rick Stengel is back with us, and MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin is here with me. Can we assess how strong or weak, first of all, Trump's case against the IRS was?
It's not even clear, Chris, that this should be a case, and let me explain why. In order to have a case in a federal court, you have to have what's called a case or controversy. And constitutionally, a case or controversy is one in which the parties are meaningfully adverse to each other. Here you've got a situation with a president who makes no disguise of the fact that he is controlling the Department of Justice, if not the IRS. And so the judge here in this case has already expressed real concerns about whether she even has jurisdiction over this case, whether it belongs in federal court, and even appointed a series of very accomplished lawyers to advise her on that point because of her concerns that DOJ and the Trump plaintiffs don't actually have meaningful adversity to one another. But even if you put that issue aside, there's a more fundamental problem with this lawsuit. The president's claims might be time barred, and that's because you're supposed to bring a suit like this at the most generous 2 years after you discover the problem. Here, the president says he wasn't advised of the fact that his tax-related information was leaked until January of 2024, which is roughly exactly 2 years before he brought this lawsuit. The problem is the Washington Post and many other publications were reporting on the fact that the person who did the leaks was arrested and pled guilty months before that. And so you've got two really fundamental issues with the lawsuit, even before you get to the merits here. One is adversity. The second is, did he bring it in time?
Rick, when you read the details of this reported proposal, an unprecedented use of taxpayer dollars with limited oversight, presidential control over who runs the fund, no obligation to disclose award procedures, among other things. Should we be alarmed?
I would be. I mean, Chris, the larger theme here is that Donald Trump has extorted everyone he's ever worked with in his entire business career. And now that he's head of the government, he's decided to extort his own government and the American people. You know, as Lisa, so ably explained, he's the plaintiff in a lawsuit against an agency that he controls. I mean, we usually think of conflicts of interest as being some small percentage of an issue. I think the conflict of interest here is actually 100%. And it's just another example of a kind of unconstitutional use of executive power, and I would be surprised if the judge in the case allows this sort of grievance slush fund to exist.
But does it, Bill, speak to what has been a theme for a lot of people in this administration, which is the weaponization of government? Does the proposal itself declare that essentially? Trump apparently was furious once he says he learned that the IRS leaked his tax returns. And so he sues, as Rick just rightly pointed out, an agency that he controls.
No, it is genuinely shocking. I'm on lots of email threads and text groups and Zoom calls with various anti-Trump people, mostly liberal, well, let's just say anti-Trump, some of them are conservative, lawyers, law professors and such. And I would say the outrage about this exceeds all the normal outrages, which are already pretty outrageous, of Trump's politicization, weaponization of justice. They're going after people they shouldn't go after. They're blackmailing, in effect, corporations to do things for them. This is like another stage of craziness. This is pretending it's a fake lawsuit. There's no adversity, as Lisa said. The judge courageously, went pretty far, seemed to be going pretty far in calling this into question, because she has to sort of, it's not, normally you presume there is an adversarial lawsuit. And so the judge was moving ahead in a very diligent way. And so Trump will decide, it looks like, based on the reporting, to short circuit a judicial decision by just ordering, basically, the Justice Department to provide $1.7 billion in an unmonitored slush fund for any friends or allies of his whom he feels like giving money to. So it's like it's a stage even beyond. I mean, to have the taxpayers be doing this directly is a stage beyond him, threatening corporations who then make contributions which benefit Trump, which is bad enough and which is already out of control. So I feel like it's the kind of epitome. It's like, I don't know, whatever the right word for this is. It's the most amazing example of the pure extortion and kleptocracy that Trump is now engaging in.
And he could do that, Lisa?
It's unclear whether he can do this over the long term. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Trump voluntarily withdraws the lawsuit. That would deprive the judge here of any say over the settlement. But they might not care. They could set up, theoretically, this $1.7 billion.
So, again, just maybe watching too much TV or too much Law and Order.
Yeah.
I think most of us probably have the perception that if there is a settlement in a case that has not come to a conclusion, the judge doesn't have a say in that?
Well,
doesn't the judge have to sign off?
Generally speaking, the judge has to sign off, particularly if the parties want the judge to have continued jurisdiction to enforce settlement terms. Again, that's what typically happens when parties are genuinely adverse to one another. What I'm suggesting to you could happen here, particularly since you have a judge who's expressed concerns that she might not have jurisdiction, is that we're going to see a little bit of kabuki theater. I can see a situation in which the Trumps, who are plaintiffs here, say, you know what, we're going to voluntarily withdraw our complaint. That would deprive her of any jurisdiction over what happens thereafter. Then you could see the establishment of that $1.7 billion fund that ABC News has reported on. And in that case, it's not clear to me that anyone would have standing to challenge the establishment of that fund. On the other hand, if a Democratic administration were to come into power, it's also not clear to me that that fund would be permanent. If you don't put it in a court-approved settlement, you don't have a court there to help extend its life or ensure that it's complied with later down the road. That's the dilemma for them.
So, Rick, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin told MSNBC this is part of what he says is a bigger pattern of corruption from the Trump administration. Here's that.
It's like watching The Sopranos and waking up and what is the scam of the day? What is the ripoff and the caper we're going to do today? They don't have a plan to get health care to the American people or lower inflation on day one or bring down the price of groceries or housing. No, they've got plans to get themselves rich. So this is corruption versus democracy.
So it's interesting to me when you hear Bill say, Rick, that he's hearing a lot more about this in a different way than he has to some other, what you might consider to be similar stories. But I wonder, among voters, among the average American, have they kind of become numb to these kind of stories because they just keep piling up?
Well, Chris, I hope not. And, to piggyback on Congressman Raskin, I mean, Richard Nixon's corruption, he was a piker compared to Donald Trump. The scale of the corruption is just extraordinary. You're putting 2, 3, 4 zeros on things that happened before. But what I'm hopeful about is that there'll be a sort of a trickle-down effect to the voters. I mean, what we saw happen in Hungary with Viktor Orban was defeated because his opponent campaigned on corruption, the corruption of the state that worked its way down to the voters. I hope voters see that. They may not feel it, but I think, these kinds of things reveal, once again, that, Trump doesn't see his job as being president of all the people. He sees his job as helping his family and this kind of oligarchy around him. And I hope voters will see that.
Rick Stengel and Lisa Rubin, thank you. Bill Kristol, please stay with me.